All right, I have started it, and we will start the show in three, two, one. Hello, everybody. This is Jay with Behind the Grind, the Professional GM Chronicles. I want to welcome you to another episode, and we're blessed to have with us Echo. Echo Hines is join us. Hey, hi, Echo.
Hi.
Echo has got well over 750 games on Start Playing Games and 1,000 to her credit outside of it, and has been a seasoned veteran game master for quite a while. And she's graciously taken time to be able to visit with us, to be able to share some insights to help us be able to up our game mastering abilities, as well as answer questions for those who might be considering professional GMing as a career option. So, Eka, if you wouldn't mind, just take a little bit of time and tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been running D&D ever since I was about 12. I started playing back with my friends in middle school, high school, whatever. And this was back third edition had just released. But we were a bunch of broke kids and we didn't have money for all the books. I think we just had the third edition player's handbook, and everything else we had was AD&D stuff that my friend's dad had. So our first like maybe 10, 15 sessions were us trying to inelegantly hack the two together to be this single playable thing, and my God, was it a mess. It was fun though. It was wild. Um, since then, I've been playing with friends off and on. I took to the role of forever GM pretty early on, and kind of stuck with it because I enjoy it. Um, and yeah, over time, just sort of gradually morphed into uh, doing it professionally.
Well, how did you get involved with Start Playing Games? What was the motivator there?
I was working for a company that I'm pretty sure no longer exists in the U.S. anymore. Um, and I was doing some scheduling stuff for them, and word came down that they were basically going to be laying off everyone in the stateside. Um, so I had about 2.5 months of just coast, get a paycheck, and whatnot. So I figured, well, while I'm doing that, I can at least start trying to set applications, try doing this and that. And I don't remember exactly where I saw. I mean, I'm sure it was just like some internet like ad that popped up. It was like, hey, for start playing. And I'm like, well, that takes the hard part out of it. I'll put up a game on there, see if I can get anyone, and um, one thing led to another on that. And before I knew it, I was making basically as much doing this as I was at the old job. So like, all right, I guess I'm not getting into anything else because
Do something I like as opposed to something I have to do. Totally understand
right.
that. Totally understand that. Okay, so given as long as you've been running games, is there any sessions that stands out as most memorable, either before when you were just running for your friends, or since you've become a professional GM?
So there's one that kind of always sticks with me, and this was running for some friends, but it was relatively recently, a couple of years back in the grand scheme of things. Um, and this adventure kind of sticks with me for a couple of reasons. One, because there was a character that my friend brought in who I mean, because he joined like several sessions in, and he just wanted to be able to like drop it and go. And so the character that he pitched had, a pretty comedic bent to it, where it was a goblin who was 1/3 of a three goblins in a trench coat setup that had gotten separated from his other two brothers, and he was always the legs. And well, over the course of the campaign, because he literally fell out of the sky, they picked him up, and we started going. And sessions and sessions later, we start getting these little more and more snippets of his backstory about like how he was always like looked down on and basically abused by the other two. Like, oh, you're not good for anything. You're just the legs. Shut up. So on and so forth. And this silly freaking bit character winds up being like the heart of the party. Well, fast forward to the final session where the group, well, they were dealing with this mind flayer threat that had infested under a city, and they'd made an elder brain and all that, and um, the whole group's there fighting it, and the pretty much everyone else is some manner of paralyzed or incapacitated because mind shenanigans. And Hingle, that was his name, the character's name, anyways, winds up saving the day because he can't do any damage to it because he, I don't know, lacks the right weapons or something. He needed a spell or whatever, but nobody was close enough. So he winds up saving the day because he can still move by picking up his other party members and being the
The
legs once
legs.
more.
Oh, how ironic! That's awesome.
Yeah, right? Yeah, no, it came so full circle. It was wonderful.
I can see that when it stood up for you. All right. So after having run as many games as you've run, especially in a professional setting, um, there's always that control chaos factor where you got people coming in, people going out, and it makes things a challenge. Have you ever had a session go completely off the rails, and how did you handle it? When I mean off the rails, is like, okay, we're going to go this way, but the party wants to go that way. So, how do you handle it?
I don't know that I've ever had a session stay on the rails, actually, to be frank with you. Um, no, I mean, a long time ago, I pretty much internalized the fact that if I want them to do option A, and they want to do option A, and they agree in character and above the table, they're all going to do option A. 15 minutes later, they're going to be swerving off to do option B or C or something. It's just gonna happen. So I do try to like account to. I mean, you can't account for everything, but any stretch. But I try to at least have some ideas of how I can link the things together. But at the end of the day, if they're just doing something wild and off tangent, I just go for it. Make that the story now. I have a group going on that I've been kind of leading them with this sort of world threatening big bad monster. I don't want to get all into it, but and they decided about a third of the way through, like, hey, I know how we can deal with that. Let's go because they found a manual of golems because I rolled that into my loot like an idiot. For a flesh golem, and they're like, hey, I know how we can deal with this issue. Let's go make a flesh golem out of dragon parts. So that's been the last half a year of campaign is them trying to find dragons to
Oh
kill
my
and
gosh.
I mean, but it's still like it is a story. It's still moving forward. Like I can't be mad at it. They're having fun. I'm having fun with it. So no, yeah, embrace it. I guess is my answer to how to handle it going off the rails.
Oh, very cool. It sounds like a mess, but it sounds like a
It
beautiful
is.
mess. So that's all right. All right. So I know you've been doing this thing since you've been 12 years old, but during that time, have you been influenced by anybody? Is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out that's had a part in influencing your storytelling capability or storytelling abilities or anything like that?
It's gonna be a weird answer.
Okay.
Douglas Adams, of all people,
Um,
Hitchhiker's Guide.
yeah, that's what I was trying to come up with. I know the name. That's right. Okay.
If
You're not the first person to say that, by the way.
oh yeah, main reason being is it is reading his stuff. It gets your brain to work in unexpected like directions, or you become more receptive to things that don't necessarily seem to be congruous at first, but they are. Um, but no, I don't actually consume a lot of D&D based media or anything anymore. Um, I mean, I love me a good fantasy story, Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings, all that jazz. But I mean, I of course I've taken inspiration from all those things, but I mean, running D&D, who literally hasn't.
I think as Shakespeare says, there's nothing new under the sun. So
Mhm.
inspiration comes in all forms. It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about your philosophy on game mastering. How do you balance the narrative storytelling with player agency?
So that's a fun question. I to a certain degree, I almost view the player agency and the player's actions as the most important core of the storytelling. I
Okay.
want to build the story around the players. Now, that isn't to say, that they're the only piece in play and that, the story can't, affect their decisions, but it is ultimately their decision, what they want to do. And, like, you get the classic example of, well, I want to jump to the moon. Well, you can try. You're going to fail, but you can try. Um, and that's kind of how I like to run with it. And then, um, they'll occasionally scale it down a little bit, and you finally wind up getting a somewhere in the middle ground where the high level barbarian says, "Well, I want to jump up onto the flying dragon's back." I'm like, "You can try. You might succeed, but you can try." Um,
Okay. So what's your approach to dealing with challenging or disruptive players at your table?
so I run sort of a session zero for pretty much all my games. I like to sit down and talk with the players that join and um, get to know them a bit, get to know the character they want to bring in, the way that they want to play. Um, so I feel like I avoid a lot of the worst aspects of it that way. I'm not. I don't even really think I've had like what I would truly call like a nightmare player
Okay.
before. The worst I've really had is someone who just a couple that just really didn't fit in with what everyone else wanted out of the game at the table, and it felt like they were always trying to pull it a in one way where like everyone else is clearly like, all right, well, let's kind of go this way with it. And usually that boils down to, them uh wanting all the spotlight, usually is kind of
I kind
how
of figured.
I see that. And I mean, for that, talk with them, let them know, and if it continues, then just give them the boot, unfortunately.
But nothing at this point has become combative or polarizing.
No,
That's good. Okay, very
no.
cool. With as many games you've got in your belt, I could totally see something like that happening. So, but if you've got
Oh,
the skill set to be able to conflict
well,
manage
I'm
it, you're good.
I'm super averse to like any kind of heated confrontation. So like I always want to bring it down to like, hey, let's just talk about it. Let's figure out what's going on. And I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're running these out of a server that I run. So like, if it really gets bad, I can just kick them, and you know, sucks. Sorry, but
Got to be the way it's got to be. Very cool.
it do.
Okay, so this one is how do you think that as a game master, especially given that you're got paying players to join people paying you to join your table, do you think that you should prioritize the rules, the players, or the story?
It's important. I feel player enjoyment rules story, and those last two are pretty close. The rules, for instance, are important because we're all sitting down to play a game together, and it can only be a game when we all agree on the rules. Now, that isn't to say that we can't collectively decide to change the rules. And if we do, we're still playing the same game. It's all fine. So, like, I'm not saying that rules are sacrosanct or anything, but that they're there and they keep things cohesive and working. You can't. I mean, you can have a story without them, but it gets pretty wacky pretty fast. Um, and then players' enjoyment is just what keeps people coming back. Really, it's
Absolutely.
um,
With as many games you've
I
got at your table, I can see you're doing something right for getting people coming back. So
we try. It's just the pretty face, I swear.
there we go. um, okay, so this is going to be the most controversial question we're going to run into.
Mhm.
What is your stance on fudging dice as a game master?
So I used to do it a fair amount. Um, but ever since I started gaming online, I use Foundry for it, and I have made it a point for all my games to where all of my dice rolls are always public.
Okay.
So I don't fudge dice rolls anymore. I will maybe sometimes slightly fudge what an enemy will do, or like something of that nature. But the actual rolls themselves, I mean, if they're made, they're made. Some and fifth edition players have a few tools at their disposal, silvery barbs and whatnot, to like, I really hate that roll. But then again, I've gone from a crit and somebody silvery barbs it, and it's still a crit, and I'm like, hey, that's just a canon event, yo. I don't. Um, no, I'm not gonna say I think it takes away anything. I mean, I guess it kind of does to a degree, but it's whatever. It depends on what you value the most at your table.
Very true.
Um, I just don't see it as a tool that really needs to be used outside of like, I don't even know. I don't do it. I don't like, you know, get upset with anyone that does. Well, I mean, I might, anyone that in their games as a DM would fudge rolls, like, it's your game. You do what you want to do with it. But no, it even makes it feel more um better sense of stakes for the players and for me, knowing that, like, the dragon's not gonna suddenly drop dead just because somebody hit it really cool. It's still got a third of a health bar. It's pissed. You all need to figure that out.
Amen to that. All right, let's go ahead and switch. We're going to talk about crafting worlds of narratives, but before we do, I want to encourage you viewers to roll a nat 20 for engagement. Like, share, subscribe for more legendary content. Now that I got that shameless plug out of the way, we'll go to the next part. So, again, we're talking about crafting worlds and narratives. How do you approach world building in your campaigns? Oh, just out of curiosity, how many games a week do you run?
On average, about five.
Okay. Out of those five, how many are one shot versus campaign?
Oh, they're all campaign. I
Okay,
don't
very
I
cool.
don't tend to do one shots.
Okay. So when we're talking about world building, when you start a game off, do you start off with a big map and you have them start here, or do you start off with everybody's in a village or a city or whatever, and their world grows from there? What's your preference on that world building?
So that actually depends on the group, a lot of the time, on kind of how their characters are presented, and how, like, if you get someone whose backstory is all about, it's a page or so of just like these small little moments of them growing up in life and yada yada yada, then I'm definitely going for the latter approach for that group, where things start small and then they branch out from there. Um, then conversely, there are, sometimes groups where the whole conceit of it, the thing that they want the most out of it is the adventure and the grand scale stuff. And with that, then I'll usually present the whole map and be like, all right, well, this is where we are, what exists, what do you do? And I've been running in the same homebrew setting since I was, well, 13 or so. It took about a year to properly develop. Um, but and I've just been building on and adding onto it since then. So I've done the top down, inside and out, and anymore it is a lot pretty fun to zoom in and do a bottom up. Okay, well, what's going on with this town that I named 6 years ago and haven't touched since? Like,
All right. Um, so with as many games as you have in your belt, and I know that you know your world inside and out, how do you go about any suggestions on creating memorable NPCs?
just make them silly.
Okay.
Like, not necessarily goofy, not like even necessarily over the top. There's an example of one that I pulled the other day that I'm still kind of proud of. My setting has a small handful of beast folk, other than like tabaxi and lizard. Has some non-standard ones like mole
Mm-hmm.
people and the like. And um, players were looking for a shopkeeper, a ladder merchant of all things, and they, so of course, they find one because it's a big city. down to, and it's this kindly, sweet old mole man, and he's oh and they well because here's the thing, they were planning on stealing from him, so I make him the sweetest, kindest old. Well, I'm just doing it to for my family and my kids. I'm blind. I can't even see because he's a mole man. Of course, he's blind. And I just do it for. And right because right as they're like like maybe we shouldn't do this. One of the party members is an Aarakocra, so he just starts going off on the most hateful. Well, I don't actually say any of it, but implied bird racism that you have ever heard. And suddenly they're 360. Maybe we will steal from this guy. Maybe it'll be all right. Um, I don't know. Just give him a little personality.
Okay. All right. So, with as many games as you've got, okay. So, when you're running a game, I know you got people coming in and out all the time. Um, and I know when people come in, they bring with them their backstory for their characters. How do you incorporate their backstories into a larger campaign narrative? How do you handle that?
Well, sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. It really depends on what backstory they come at me with. Because sometimes I have had people's backstories just slot in perfectly to the overarching narrative, and I'm just like, well, this is from what you're describing. This is clearly where you come from. Like this is you know, and then from point A to point B, and I mean that's pretty much the end of it. Um, kind of work out. Okay, well, what do we do between this and meeting the party or whatever? But um, and then sometimes it's just a complete like. I'm not gonna say they give me nothing to work with. They give me plenty to work with, but nothing that makes it immediately apparent where or how they would fit in. And in those cases, that's usually where sitting with them and chatting with them for a while. And we'll just get to talking. Okay, well, what did your character used to do? What you gave me their backstory, but like what have they done since this and that? And then try to work out like, okay, well, this seems to be your place in the world, and then I will try to fit in a hook from the current plot thread. Like, okay, well, you remember when you said when you were little there was like, a monster ravaged your home city? Well, as it turns out, that was this monster that the party is dealing with, um, or what have you. So,
That brings them in. Okay. What advice would you give to GMs who struggle with improvisation during sessions?
it improvisation is like most any and everything else a skill that can be trained.
Okay.
So I would suggest training it because improvisation is the best tool to have as a GM. Because you're never going to be able to plan for everything, like ever. I mean, you're going to be able to plan for 1% of the crazy shit players are going to pull. So really, just get accustomed to rolling with the punches. You oh, excuse me. I mean, ultimately know generally where or what the next step should be. But if they're railing against that and like, no, we want to go do this thing instead, then as far as I'm concerned, the campaign is now about that instead. Um, I mean, to within a certain amount of seriousness and if the party wants to go pick flowers for a session, like that's not not gonna be the whole campaign, but nice, easy session picking flowers or going to the hot springs or whatever. Um, see, I've gotten off topic here.
You're good.
Um, no, get better at it
that's
is my one piece of advice with improv.
that's totally cool. All right, so the next set of questions are pro GM questions, and these are questions that guys like me want to ask people like you,
Mhm.
especially that are where we hope to be someday. And the information here just gives us some insight into possible challenges that we may face, as we try and become professional GMs, full-time GMs. So, first question is, what does the day of a pro GM look like for you?
Well, it all starts off with a dangerous amount of coffee. Um,
Of course, it does.
so usually what I'll do a couple hours prior to session is I'll go into the game world that I'm running for that day, for that time slot, what have you. Sort of quickly refamiliarize myself with the game state when we last left it. Refamiliarize myself with because I don't take notes very well. My notes are the game board as I last left it because it's virtually preserved, so I can look through the logs and everything. Um, and then sort of thinking, okay, well, where are they likely to go from here? Because some groups I know exactly what their plan is because they've talked about it and we've all you know we're going into the castle, we're gonna fight things, we're gonna beat the lich, so on and so forth. Perfect. That's an easy day because then all I have to do is stick monsters in a castle, stick a couple fun NPCs somewhere hidden to you know have a little bit of levity with because I don't like running sessions that are literally just all combat. I have done. I don't like it, but I'll do it if I need to. Um, but for the I don't want to say nightmare days, but the days that are a bit more intimidating going into it are days where well maybe we've just ended a big uh, story beat or something, and the group is literally just relaxing in a tavern, and like yeah they vaguely have a direction of where to go, and they'll probably be going in that direction, but well, what are they going to run into along the way? What's going to be interesting there to meet them? So I'll, you know, try to cook up something for that. And usually by the end of it, I've gotten enough pre-planned that either they can bounce off that for a while, or they'll completely can go off the rails and head back west instead of wherever. And then, but those are fun days as well because then I'm just as seat of my pants as they are. Um, but yeah, I run my sessions in 3 hour chunks. That is so middle of the session there's a 15-minute break,
Mhm.
so I can go get some water, stretch my legs, players as well. Um, and then the last 15 minutes I have dedicated to a sort of wind down, stars and wishes, aftercare type of, did everybody enjoy, what do you want to see more of, what do you not want to see more of, you know, um, so that I can usually try to get a better, just a good pulse on how everyone's feeling with
Okay.
things.
How do you handle no shows?
They happen. Usually, with the groups that I run, I run it out of a Discord server, and usually people are pretty good about letting me know like, hey, I'm not gonna be there today or what have you. Um, as long as there are enough players that do show up to play the game, e.g., three or more people, usually because running a game with two PCs is doable, but can get a little taxing all the way around. So as long as there's enough people to play, it is what it is. Oh, where's so and so? Oh, he's just shitting himself. He's over there in the bushes. Don't worry about him. He'll be fine. Um, what has been 3 days? Yeah, no, it's a really bad case. Don't worry about it. Because sometimes you get those, those, you know, couple days skips in a single session or whatever. Um, but no, they just either aren't there or, well, I mean, that's my thing. Like, I don't like, they just vanish or whatever. They're still there. They're just implied to be off screen doing something else.
Got it.
Um,
Your own solo adventuring, even if it is in the
yep.
bushes. All right.
And depending on, because sometimes we'll make jokes about it during the day, or during the game, and then like next week they come back and like, oh yeah, you were off hunting wolves all last session. What? Yeah, no, it was decided. How'd you do?
I'm alive, I think. All right.
Right.
So, do you have as much fun GMing now as you did uh, when you're doing it for friends? Has there been a
Yes,
perspective change?
yes, and no.
Okay.
So yes, it's still fun because I still love it, and it's really enjoyable. There's definitely a lot more I want to say stress to it. which is to be expected when accounting for you know my income. But um, I have fun with it. The thing that struck me with it, and this struck me quite early on, is how incredibly mentally taxing it is to DM several times in a week. Um, because I mean, especially comparing it to any other job, like any other job I've ever had, like yeah, it's taxing, it's difficult, but there are at least times where I can like you know s- sit still for a second and just let my mind decompress, just take a breath, stare off into space, do what I have to. You can't really do that DMing. You've kind of got to be constantly there with it.
Yeah.
If even if I'm not talking, I'm going to be actively listening to what's being said so that I can then okay, well here's what happens. Um, which I feel could definitely run the risk of some kind of burnout. I actually felt that early on when I started. I was like afraid, like I might burn out on this. But then I got a little better at. So I first thing I did because I used to run 4 hour sessions. First thing I did was shorten it down to 3 hour sessions, which helped a lot. Um, and just kind of over time have become, I like to think I become friends with my players and that they become friends with me. So it's I'm still running D&D for friends. Um, so that helps a fair amount too.
Very
And
cool.
they come up with cool stuff of their own, and I can just bounce off that. That's perfect.
Very cool. Um, so when you talk about your playing players that come in and they get involved with your games, what are their expectations? What do you think it is that keeps them coming back to your games?
Hand to God, I don't know. They're enjoying themselves. Um, really, I mean, I like to think I offer an engaging story and engaging gameplay. I've had so one of my players played in like 7 or 8 paid games a week
Mm-hmm.
with the various different DMs, and he said what made mine stand out to him was that my games were the most like a at home tabletop pen and paper style game as he has ever gotten on you know the internet. Um, which and he was very clear about this in a good way. Because I don't really feel because like we talked earlier, like rules, for instance, I, I don't feel necessarily beholden to them. And if the whole table is like, hey, this ruling is kind of dumb, doesn't make sense, like, what if it worked this way instead? And everyone's cool with it. Boom, house rule, we go with it. Um, so I think their expectation is to have fun, and if nothing else, I think I am halfway decent at supplying that.
Well, you must be more than halfway if you got returning players doing as long as you have and have as many games under your belt as you do. So that is a compliment to your skill set. Okay, so along those lines, there, what do you do to create a sense of immersion for your players? Do you is it story? Do you do something with your maps, music, um, characters? I mean,
All of it,
what do you do? Okay.
all of it. I kind of scoured around back when I first started for a huge library of sort of top-down style tokens, maps that are very fitting and interesting. Music, 100%. I mainly stick to like Final Fantasy, like 8, 9, a little bit 14 for the music, which between them have most any like um, vibe you could want for a given thing. Um, but no, I like to think it's sort of it all comes together. The art, of course, I pretty much just use basic out the book art for most things, but I encourage players to if they have good artwork that they feel reflects what their character sort of looks like, add that, and I'll use it. And then when we have like slower like sections where it's just them talking with an NPC or whatever, I'll usually put the the art of the people talking up on screen while they're chatting. Um, I think the maps also have a decent amount to do with it. And there's a lot of good free maps you can get online that many of which are pre-set up to work with virtual tabletops. So you don't have to spend the better part of an hour meticulously drawing walls in. Um, yeah, I don't know.
It totally works.
Yeah, no, that's actually a question I've never really confidently known the answer to is how do I create immersion? I feel pretty sure that I do.
Well, the proof is in the pudding, bottom
For the
line.
life of me,
So,
yeah, for the life of me, I couldn't tell you how.
okay. Very cool. All right. We're going to sidestep into another set of questions. This is on the role of the professional GM in the online TTRPG community. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing game masters in the modern TTRPG community right now?
Very good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that.
Okay.
I can only speak to my challenges, and that is mostly a matter of having the time, energy, and willpower to put into making and running the games. The excuse me one moment. Sorry. The site I use for most of my uh, player relations anymore is startplaying.games, and that kind of takes care of 95% of the challenges on my end because it's just like I have the listing up, people join, I invite them to the Discord, we chat, they got a character, next session, they're in.
Very cool. How do you feel about the responsibility of representing diversity and inclusion in your games, both at your table as well as in your actual sessions with NPCs and whatnot?
Right. I I feel it's quite important. I I mean, there's the surface level of course, the setting itself has many different, humans, non-humans, elves, dwarves, beast folk, what have you. Um, However, oh heavens, what I do to kind of if anything draw attention to it is one of the villainous factions in my setting are a group of militant human supremacists um, who serve as a really good plot motivator of sort of this
Good
rich and
antagonist.
nasty army in the shadow. Great antagonist. Um, but it's I I treat them almost like Saturday morning cartoon villains, where they're threatening and dangerous, but when you really get up close with them, they're sort of ineffectual buffoons. Like yeah, they're the only setting or the only faction in the setting that can reliably make like guns and stuff, but as a whole, they're pretty narrow-minded and stupid about things. Making them both a, a good threat to be aware of, but also very fun to fight against and win against. Which you know is it. At the end of the day, if you can just at least punch Nazis, everything gets a little better.
No argument there. Um, what advice would you give to aspiring GMs who are trying to make a name for themselves online?
Just keep doing it. Just keep on keeping on, and eventually somebody will invite you to talk on a podcast.
All right. This is the last question, and then we'll go to things you'd like to plug or would like to talk about. So,
Mhm.
what is your vision for the future of tabletop RPGs, and how do you see yourself contributing to that evolution?
You would end on a tough one, wouldn't you? No,
Absolutely.
I, I really don't know. I mean, I feel like we are in sort of a I almost call it like a renaissance
Mhm.
of tabletop RPGs. There are so many more options to play than there were when I was younger, and I mean, there's more and more every day, and they're all catered to specific play styles or different play styles, I should say. Um, so barring some terrible catastrophe, I think there's nowhere to go but up. Um, I would like to be a you know a small little fixture on one small outdated gaming system that people can still come to and play and enjoy themselves with. I have very limited experience with some of the other newer systems. Not that I don't want to have that experience. It's just the time and energy to
Absolutely.
do it all. Um, but I don't see myself going anywhere anytime soon. So
Okay, Echo.
um, yeah.
That's all the questions that I've got. Is there anything you would like to talk about that you're promoting? Anything that you'd like to let the world know about?
Not as such, really. I'm kind of a boring person when it comes down to it. You know, stay politically engaged, of course, but that's a bit broader than I feel this.
For our scope, yeah.
Yeah. For the scope of this. Um, no, the only thing I really have to put out there is if you ever want to play a game with me, you can find me on Start Playing, and I look forward to seeing you.
Excellent, and we'll make sure we include your information on the bottom, in the body of the video, so that people can see this and do everything we can. But guys and gals, if you got questions for Echo or me, we love engagement. So please, let us know what you think. Is there anything about the interview that you had questions on, or want Echo or I to follow up on? Is there anything that you would like us to address that's outside of our things we're doing? But in the end, we're trying to create an excellent resource for game masters to be able to up their level. So we'll wrap things up here in a little bit. Before I do, I just want to tell everybody, make sure you roll that natural 20 for engagement, like, share, and subscribe to this legendary content. And as we go forward with this thing, guys, like I said, we really want to know what else we could do to just to meet your needs. So it's a sincere effort on our part. So, Echo, again, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. And guys, we look forward to you guys for the next session. So, God bless.